What is up, everybody? We are rolling audio here today on episode 8 of The Hotter Show. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, hitting that play button. I hope you are having an awesome day so far, because you are awesome and you deserve it. Never let anyone tell you otherwise. Everyone is awesome in their own way. I'm in a really good mood today. A lot of good stuff has happened lately. The podcast continues to go well. The past 2 episodes were strictly wrestling based. A lot of people did dig them. I know there were a few people who tuned in who maybe weren't necessarily wrestling fans, but who did still enjoy them. So for that, I thank you so much for supporting them. On Twitter, I got quite a bit few new followers in that from the 2 podcasts, as well as from tweeting as much as I was. So if there's any new listeners listening in, thank you so much for listening in. I appreciate you checking out more of the podcasts. And to my regular listeners, you know I appreciate you as well. So what's going on this week? Well, this week we are celebrating something that is a pretty big deal in the gaming community. And that is the 30th, well, they're saying 30th birthday, but it's really an anniversary. The 30th anniversary of The Legend of Zelda. Quite possibly the best video game series ever made. And I'm sure a lot of people will agree with me on that. As far as an innovative series, a series that really has stood the test of time, a series that innovated and really set the bar high for any games that try to make the same type of game, as far as kind of fantasy RPG style adventure games. It has set the bar extremely high. I can say for me personally, it's a very big deal because the Legend of Zelda series has always been very close to my heart. As I sit here and record this, I actually have my Link action figure from when I was a kid sitting on the desk here. He is riding a very angry looking Epona. It's cool. As a kid, I was pretty shy and pretty quiet and didn't really know how to talk to people a whole lot. So for me, video games were kind of not an escape. It's not like I had a bad life or anything. I had a wonderful life growing up, but just for me, video games were almost like a playing a video game in a fantasy world, and that where you're a hero when you're doing this and everyone loves you and stuff. It's a really great feeling for any kid, especially a kid who you're not the most popular kid in the world, or you don't really have a whole lot of friends. It's just a really awesome feeling, and that was always the feeling I got from playing a lot of video games, mainly from playing the Legend of Zelda series. Am I maybe reading into it a little bit? Probably. But that's when people say to me, well, video games are just time wasters and that kind of thing. To some people, sure, but to some people, they mean a whole hell of a lot more. And that's the reason that I decided to kind of do a bit of a tribute episode to The Legend of Zelda. Specifically, my favorite in the series. Well, actually, I have 2. It's kind of a tricky thing because the one game was the first Zelda game I ever played, as wasn't most people's my age. So it holds a very special place in my heart. It is still to this day, I do consider it my favorite game. This one particular game I'm going to kind of start focusing on here is Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, which I'm sure a lot of people probably guessed. If you know me at all, you know how much I love this damn game. You ask a lot of people, hey, what's the best video game ever made? A lot of people are going to say Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, and there's a reason for it, because it truly is one of the best games ever made. As far as being an innovative game, as far as being a game with tons of replay value, as far as a game that truly at times was challenging in a good way, but also it wasn't like impossibly hard, if that makes any sense. It was a game that most of us played as a child. I myself played it when I was younger, only to go back to it years after and replay it and go, wow, like really appreciate it from another light and appreciate it from the sense of now I maybe understand things a little bit more, and certain things like, fighting certain bosses and going to certain areas of the game, and that there's almost I almost you almost see it from a different light, if that makes any sense, when you're a little bit older. And it made me just realize how truly awesome this game really was. Actually, very recently, I started another playthrough of it, like just like a few weeks ago. And I haven't gotten very far in it in this playthrough I'm doing, but it's truly reminding me just how amazing this game is. I just said to myself, you know what? I wanted to do something in celebration of the 30th anniversary, and I just decided I'm going to talk about my two favorite Zelda games. So, talking about Ocarina of Time, I mean, where do you start with a game like that? A game that literally so many people consider to be the best game of all time, um, for so many different reasons. I mean, shit, how the game starts off, you with that intro, kind of like the intro video, and that, the story is told. You are this young boy in the forest, and you're different from all the other forest kids and stuff, and you get found by Navi, your fairy, and you have to go help save the Great Deku Tree, and walking inside the Great Deku Tree for the first time, just going, holy shit, like, this is like crazy. There's giant spiders and webs and things, and just insane, just insane, especially for a kid. But for me, stepping out into Hyrule Field for the first time as young Link I will never forget that feeling, because I remember just how massive it seemed. I remember walking up and going, oh my God, like I have to walk across this, you know? I'm looking around and I'm like, oh my God, like this is insane. But I started trekking across the field, following the path there, and I looked to my left and I saw, if anyone who knows the game knows, there's that weird plant creature thing. I can't remember the name of it right now, but it comes out of the ground and starts flying, and it has those big blades. And I was like, oh my God, what the? I'm like running away. And I remember feeling genuinely scared for a second. You know what I mean? Like that feeling, it just makes me smile. I run across the field and get to Hyrule Castle and stuff, and going in to meet Princess Zelda for the first time, and she sends you on the mission. And, I can sit here and talk about the whole storyline of the damn game, but it's that feeling of massiveness and adventure that was something that I never felt anything like that before. For the fact that I felt it in a video game was crazy for me to think about now as an adult. And I think that is something that is important for me to realize now as an adult. Like, man, this video game had this kind of an effect on me. Like, what the heck? Like, that's so weird to think, you know? Sitting here now talking about it, it's like I have this feeling of, yeah, it's nostalgia, but it's also just, it's like I'm talking about an old friend, if that makes any sense. Obviously, with Legend of Zelda, it is a big game. It's a game that you go through your time being young Link or child Link. You have some epic adventures, along the way. You get some awesome items, which is something about the game that I love. Some of the unique items and weapons and that you get, and you get to see some awesome dungeons. My personal favorite out of them all, while being Child Link, is the Dongo's Cavern. Mainly because I just loved the build up to that. And, like you go see the Gorons and that, and then you have to save them because they have no rocks to eat in that, even though there's a giant rock blocking the cavern. I always thought that was kind of funny, but it is what it is. There's a lot of really cool puzzles in that. And then the final boss fight with King Dodongo is awesome, having to throw the bombs in his mouth and stuff. Like, just a really cool thing as a kid. I really felt that was such a massive level. The having to collect the stones and everything, I thought was a really cool deal. The whole time I'm playing this game, playing through as Child Link, I'm thinking, okay, once I get these 3 stones, I'm going to beat the game. There was a part of me that thought that way, and not really paying attention to the artwork or anything on the back, realizing that there is also an adult Link in that, of course. I go through the game, and you go through it, and you finally get all the stones, and you go to the Temple of Time, and you open to get the Master Sword, and you get the Master Sword, and it's kind of a trap, Ganondorf springs his trap and everything, and he takes over Hyrule, and it's just this. I remember the feeling of betrayal almost I felt, but also of just I need to save this place, you know? That feeling of wanting to help and save, I think is something that I carry on into my everyday life. I love helping people and stuff like that. And I'm really making it sound like this game basically giving my morals and stuff when in reality it really didn't. But just for people who maybe don't see, they just see this as a video game when so many people I know see it as, it's a lot more than just some game we play to pass the time. It was a big part of our lives. Video games can affect your life in a sense of just as much as say music can. If there's an album that affects you and that, there's no reason a game can't affect you the same way. Of course, coming back, being adult Link, and seeing how much things change from when you were a kid to when you grow up, I almost feel like it's kind of a weird thing of like, now I see that and I go, man, like it's kind of crazy how weird that is to look at from an adult standpoint. When you're a kid, everything's bright and colorful and good for the most part, and then when you're an adult, it's the world's gone to shit and all this stuff. Not that life's like that when you're an adult, but it's almost funny to kind of look at it from a standpoint of really analyzing that. I'm sure it means nothing, but it's just kind of something funny that I just thought about now. But when you're an adult, you get tons of more items and you meet lots of other different characters in some of the temples that you go through. One thing that I thought was so cool going from child Link to an adult Link was the fact that it actually affected the world. There were certain characters that were around when you were a kid that weren't around anymore, and there was areas that were completely different. Obviously, there was characters that say were young when you were a kid, and then when you grow up, they grow up with you. And I just thought that was so cool to see kind of the effect on the world. And potentially, as you save Hyrule, things kind of either go back to normal or they at least get somewhat better. One of the first things I did as adult Link is I went to Lon Lon Ranch, and I saw what happened there, and saw Malin and that, and I saw that. I can't remember his name right now. The evil dude who was there. I can't remember his damn name. Oh, I should have done some more research before this, but I just wrote out some point blank notes I wanted to talk about. You have to race him to save the ranch and stuff, and you go get Talon. And it's just, I remember, I went back there a second time, and I thought it was so cool how like it was back to normal now and everything. And the first time you see Death Mountain, you see that red ring around it, basically symbolizing that everything is not good up there. I thought it was so cool. And then getting to meet some of the characters along the way, like that you only can meet as an adult, like some of the sages and that. I thought was so cool. All of them being unique, all of them kind of having their own backstory and that, if you care to look into it. Just a really cool thing. That's the one thing with Legend of Zelda is the characters. It made you care about all the characters you met. Yeah, maybe some people didn't give a shit about, say, what happened at Lon Lon Ranch or like what happened in the market. Like that's something that when I came out of the Temple of Time and walked into the market for the first time and saw that what it had become, it's this crazy feeling of like, oh my God, like what happened here? You go to the castle and you see what's become of the castle. It's now Ganondorf's castle, and it's just, it's crazy. I remember just this overwhelming feeling of panic come over me as a kid, just going, oh my God, like what happened? Like I thought everything was gonna be good. Oh my God, like I have to help. I have to save. And that's what you set out to do. And you have to collect all the medallions and stuff and go through all these different sorts of temples. And the temples are something that are so cool because you look at some of the different temples, like say something like the Forest Temple, which is probably one of my favorite temples. I remember the what you have to do to get to it. As an adult going through the maze and everything. And I thought it was so cool. And you finally get there and, you need the hook shot to get there. So you have to go see Dompe, who has passed away, the gravedigger, and you have to race him. And it's such a cool thing how in some modern video games, I feel like, they hand stuff to you a lot. Whereas in Ocarina of Time, you really had to work for a lot of stuff, Like the first time I went to the Forest Temple, I got there and I didn't know that I needed the hook shot to get into it. So I was like, oh, like, what the hell? What do I do? So when finding out that I have to go back and get the hook shot, I was like, ah, crap, go back. And coming back into it, the first time I walked into the Forest Temple, I remember like music and just that feeling. I just walked in and went, holy crap, like this is intense. Not really knowing what to expect. Because in a lot of ways, the temples were so much more, I guess, intense than the dungeons in a way. But you walk in and there's, that big open room in the first. You see the ghosts and that, and there's all the twisting corridors, and it's just such a cool temple. I remember like I love doing that temple even to this day. In my playthrough I'm doing now, I just beat it, and I remember just having so much fun playing through it. I mean, I like all the temples, even the water temple, which is something that is a big discussion when talking about Legend of Zelda, but I'm kind of just going to leave it out of this. Going through to the fire temple, I love that temple as well. It was so awesome. Probably my other favorite temple that I have to talk about, because stepping out from the Temple of Time and that feeling I got when I saw the marketplace and that, and how the whole world basically just went to shit. That feeling compared to the feeling I got the first time I walked into the Shadow Temple and heard that music in that, it's not even comparable. Having to do the bottom of the well first, and that as a child, yeah, like the bottom of the well is freaky and it's scary as a kid, but that compared to the Shadow Temple is just crazy, man. Like, yeah, when you fight dead hand in that, it's a freaky boss, but man, the entire time I played through the Shadow Temple, I was legit scared at every turn, okay? Even playing through it like when I was older, I realized just how messed up it was, a lot of the traps they have and the music. Oh my god, like the music in there is messed up. And some of the enemies you fight, and just crazy to think about just how friggin' messed up it was. And obviously, fighting the boss for the Shadow Temple, it's probably, I don't want to say, and of course, the boss fight for the Shadow Temple it's probably my favorite boss fight in Legend of Zelda, Bongo Bongo. I think it's the fact that, like, as much as you see of this shadow creature, he's huge, and you know that there's more of him, and he's not really showing all of it. So it's like the feeling I got of fighting this big, massive creature. I'm just like, oh, like, this thing could probably kill me in a single swat, but it's choosing to fight me. It's like, man, like, that's crazy. And you finally beat it, and you're like, yeah. A lot of the boss fights at the temples were so much fun. There was a couple of them I'm not really a big fan of, but the boss fight like Bongo Bongo, as well as I forgot to mention in the Shadow Temple fighting Phantom Ganon, which is probably one of the best foreshadowing moments for a boss fight in video game history, considering how Phantom Ganon, the way you fight him is so similar, pretty much it's identical to the way you fight Ganondorf. I thought was so cool how they did that. That was something else I didn't really realize until I was older. Some of the minor boss fights, even like fighting the Iron Knuckle in the Spirit Temple, is so cool. Like the first time I saw that thing, I just went, holy crap, like, how am I gonna beat this thing, And then just like everything, you figure it out, and it's awesome. The final boss fight as well, obviously being such an awesome thing. Even just that whole final level, you finally get all the medallions and you're finally able to get into Ganon's castle. And it's awesome. And you have to redo sections, that are similar to temples and that. And finally you get through it, and And I remember I was so psyched to be able to finally fight Ganondorf. I literally, like, I sat down one morning and I played the game for probably like 12 hours straight just to get to the final boss, You go through it and you enter this room and you hear it. That organ, as you get closer, it gets louder. The do, 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 Because something I mentioned earlier, that it was such a big part of that game for me. Some of the themes to get back to the temples and that, and they're so awesome. And the theme that Ganon's playing, it sends chills down my spine to hear, because I knew, like, okay, it's about to go down. You walk in the room and Ganondorf is there, and Princess Zelda's in that crystal thing, and he puts up the Triforce and yours glows, and you're like, what? Oh man. And he like blows the room up, and you have your fight with him, which is, so similar to the Phantom Ganon fight, and you fight him and you fight him and you beat him, and you're like, oh, like, we did it. And then he brings the entire castle down around you, and that feeling of panic was back for me. I just went, oh my god, like, we have to get out of here, and you have Zelda with you, and you're running, and she gets trapped, and you have to beat guys to protect her and stuff, and finally you get out of there. The castle literally collapses the second you're out of it, and then you're like, okay, I did it, and then Ganondorf pops back up, and I went, uh-oh, I'm screwed. And then he friggin' transforms into Ganon. And that is, without a shadow of a doubt, probably the coolest final boss fight in a video game I've ever played anyway, okay? I find in modern games, I find a lot of the times like final bosses and stuff like that, they're getting kind of lackluster, you know? And that one, it's like he comes up and he's swinging his swords and he knocks the Master Sword out of your hands. And you're potentially defenseless unless you have the bigger end knife. And you're like, oh my god, what am I going to do? And you figure out how to do it, and you get your sword back. And that cut scene where you kind of do those few final strikes and you stab him right in the face and he dies. And thinking about it now, it's so awesome. It's such a cool thing. You beat it and you're floating down from the cloud, and there's you want that romance for Link and Zelda too, but it's not gonna it's not gonna happen, and things go back to normal and everything's safe, and then the game ends off with Link showing up back at the castle and no one really know what was going on but him and Zelda, and it's awesome. It's just it's a game that I think truly makes you feel like a hero. The feeling I had after I beat that game. Like, I felt like I made a difference in the world, I was like, man, like, I did it. I saved Hyrule, like, yeah. And it's something that I talked earlier in the podcast about, how that feeling of being a hero was so big for me as a kid. I think it was for so many other people. Everyone likes feeling like they're a hero. I don't know any people that don't like being a hero. I'm sure there's some people out there who would rather be Ganondorf, but to each their own. Even to this day, playing through it again and getting that feeling of, you're helping people and stuff, it's such a cool thing. And like I said, it's something I try to do in my everyday life to kind of be, at least helpful to people. And I feel like that maybe had a hand in influencing it a little bit. Obviously, the way I was raised it as well, but that feeling is something that I never really got before from anything else except for in, helping with the dishes or something, you know what I mean? So getting that feeling from something else definitely was so cool. I definitely connected with video games and stuff like that first before I did with music. So it was a really cool deal for me, that whole thing. And something that I haven't mentioned yet in the podcast, which is actually the title of it, is the fact that Legend of Zelda basically taught me how to read. I kind of have to explain that a little bit. When I got Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, I don't remember how old I was. I'm not even going to try and guess, but all I can tell you is I was not a very good reader. Obviously, having a learning disability, it affected a few things, but my reading was very bad. I want to say I was in like grade 5, 4, somewhere in that ballpark. And, I was like grade 1 reading level. Like, it was not good. And I went home that summer and I got Legend of Zelda. Actually, the story of how I got, just kind of funny real quick. I got my tonsils out when I was younger. And my dad came to visit me at the hospital. And I had said how much I wanted Legend of Zelda. Because I rented it one night and like played it for like an hour. And I was like, oh my god, this is the best game ever. And so I kept begging them to get it for me. And finally, they decided, all right, he's in the hospital recovering from getting his tonsils out. Let's get it for him. And, I was going to have, it was 2 weeks recovery before I really would be 100%. So I played the shit out of that game. And that whole summer I played it. Not being a strong reader, it took me a long time to get through the subtitles and that. Like, this was before, there was a lot of talking in video games and stuff. And in Zelda, there never really has been a lot of it, which I think is so cool. Having to read the dialogue and explaining what I have to do and reading descriptions for items and reading maps and stuff like that. And sometimes having to do it quickly. It really helped me like get so much better at reading. And it's funny, and solving some of the puzzles and that. I think it really helped my brain kind of, help me kind of maybe catch up a little bit, if that makes sense. And it's something funny that I laugh about now because I say, oh, well, Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time basically taught me how to read. It didn't teach me how to read, but it definitely helped my reading skills a lot. So I owe Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time that. So thank you, Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, for basically helping me learn how to read. And I guess just kind of ending this off here. I know this is kind of all over the place, guys. I was just kind of trying to get some thoughts out, some basic thoughts out on Legend of Zelda and, some reasons why I love it so much and what it means to me. and the effect that it had on me. And just kind of ending this episode off here, talking about Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Really, in closing, all I have to say is, it's definitely still my favorite game ever. A lot of people say, "Oh, well, it's outdated, and the graphics are outdated, and the mechanics are not the same, and there's so many better games out there." And maybe you're right, but there has not been a game that I've played since Ocarina of Time that affected me as much as that game did. And for that reason, it's my favorite game of all time. And that's all I got to say about that. So I want you guys to let me know what you think about Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. And I want you guys to let me know what your favorite Legend of Zelda game is in the entire series. It can be anything at all. I want to hear from you guys. I always love talking to you guys, whether it's through messages on Facebook, on Instagram, you tweet me, emails, anything like that at all. I always love to talk to you guys. This is a medium for me, obviously, to talk about whatever I want and things that are important to me, but also it's an awesome way for me to connect with you guys. So definitely feel free to, even on SoundCloud here, guys, like anytime you want to comment on something that happens during the podcast, I'll be able to see what exactly it is you're referring to. So it's not like you have to wait till the end to make a comment about something or ask a question, which is really cool. So again, thank you guys so much for hitting that play button and tuning in to this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to me ramble on a little bit about Ocarina of Time and why I love it so much. I will catch you guys next time. Thanks so much.